Welcome back to Core Motivations Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Connolly. I'm a certified Enneagram coach and a Simbis marriage coach. If this is your first time joining us, welcome in. And for those returning, I'm so excited that you are here with me and that you are wanting to discover new things week after week. I'm sure you missed our hangout time the last week. I know I did. A little life recap. So 2 weeks ago, I had a visitor. I'll tell you about that, which is really good. And then last week, I was really struggling with the big dark cloud of depression. It's so hard to say out loud. I, who can be so positive with most people, giving off, the impression that life is great and I'm not just surviving, I'm actually thriving. But the truth is maybe I'm deceiving myself about that part, which is kind of confusing because I also get feedback that I do help others to feel good. So something isn't right. Anyways, last week was last week. And this week, I feel better. I'm more focused and I'm ready to take on whatever's next. So I'm glad we're back together again. So today, I have first real talk of the season. I want to dive into specific types of relationships. The relationships between parents and children, the different ways each of us experienced our parents. Well, let's get into it. I've been on this kick of family dynamics. It's been something that has really been on my heart and my mind. Wondering how our parents, more specifically, my mom, and her relationships with her kids. And yes, my dad has been a part of my life, but I think the one that I wrestle with the most is mom. So, how are our parents' relationship with my siblings? Maybe you can be thinking about your parents and how those relationships with your parents differ from your siblings. Now, I'm not sure about the similarities per se for each of us, and there might be some overlap. So, what were things we experienced? How do parents relate to each of us at different stages in our life? Each sibling, each child. What, if any, was similar? And were these core interactions defining moments for us as we grew into real adults? Can you relate to any of this stuff? There are professionals, doctors, teachers, and learners alike talk about how different each sibling's experience was or is growing up and how it shapes the way these relationships look today. So, of course, I've been reading and watching videos and listening to podcasts, you know, doing all the research. And I can with confidence say my siblings and I had completely different experiences growing up, that our parents were different with us in so many ways. Side note, up until recently, and it's really unclear why, but we haven't talked much about those differences, me and my siblings. We do not really talk about our childhood. Do you experience that? Some of these conversations are starting to happen now, but they're pretty small conversations. To me, it seems like my younger sisters had so many things, experiences, and attention that I didn't. But ask them, they might say, nope, no way, that they didn't have that different experience that I think they did. I imagine them saying, Mom was distracted with her job or her then new husband or other things that caught her attention. My experience, I was to be invisible. I talk too much. I just am too much everything. I'm to be seen and not heard. That was the things that I experienced as a kid. Crazy to think. The same person who says, I loved being a mom, I loved everything about it. We did crafts, activities, we went places, and yet my memories of those experiences are not there. Perhaps those things are true, that she really did love being a mom at certain moments of momming. However, I remember very small tidbits of those childhood experiences. I have vague recollection of ice skating with a coach and gymnastics with a coach, which was kind of special, I think. I also remember day camp, like a Girl Scouts kind of thing, camping trips with soap on a rope, if you know, you know, and a trip to Michigan. Although those details are fuzzy, but I remember the plane ride. It was long, and Michigan was cold. I suppose most people could find those details on the interweb. Ha 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 ha. That didn't sound authentic, did it? I mean, it is true. We can find a lot of those details on the internet. But before we go any further down that rabbit hole, hopefully a controlled journey, I'm so excited to report we had another out of state visitor. And not just any visitor. My sister, my sweet, sweet sister, came for a visit. It was amazing and beautiful and special in all the ways one could imagine. We talked about things, deep things. No judgment, no advice, just listening. Simplistic sensitivity. The kind of listening you wish you could not only have for yourself, but give to everyone else. This gift, this amazing type of friendship. Her visit included time for rest from all the busy experiences that she has at home in her life. And we explored the area I just moved to, saw things I haven't seen, all the while sharing it with someone I call my friend. She truly is a kind and generous soul. And I love every time we get to spend time together. We had so much fun. Which leads me to the conversation of understanding the truth and recognition of our upbringing and our childhood. The difference. Was it that different? I shared a little of my perception. When you look at the way we were raised, the experience we had, even though we had the same parents and we lived in the same house, well, most of our childhood, it begs, no, it calls out, shine a light on these possibilities of these differences. Let's ask the question, could our childhood be that different? Or how different really was it? Did our parents act or treat us differently? Was it really that apparently different and we just didn't know each other's experiences? So let's reflect for a moment. The people, talking about my parents, first as individuals, who became parents, who brought their different upbringing as they were coming together, having kids, sharing that life of parenting, which was so different in the individual interactions from child to child. My brother to me and me to my sisters. How could it be that our parents parent so differently from each child? I don't know about you, but that confuses me. What is the probability of that? So through my research, I came upon Dr. Gabor Mate. He's a Hungarian Canadian physician and psychologist who specializes in childhood development. He's an author, a speaker, an educator on topics ranging from ADD, OCD, behavior, and trauma healing. I'll post a link to his information in the show notes. And in a podcast episode with Mel Robbins, Why You Feel Lost in Life, Dr. Gabor Mate on trauma and how to heal. I will definitely link that episode. And like I said before, I love her. I love the topics that she shares. And no, she's not paying me, although I would love to have a hangout time with her if you're listening. They discuss some of these factors, which establish the differences for each child. That each child grows up with different parents. And yes, this happens in a family with multiple children. Noting there are some key factors that establish the difference, especially in parenting or parenting style, and how children are affected and respond to these interactions. So, Dr. Mate, he shares that birth order and gender differences are key factors. And this is a quote. He says, children don't experience the same parents' love the same. They experience the way the parent shows up. Can I say that again? Children don't experience the parents' love the same. They experience the way the parent shows up. Okay, wow. This hits me so hard. I take that to mean that for good or for bad, my parents showed up differently for me than they did for my brother, who's firstborn, and my sisters third and fourth in the birth order, which leads me to think that not knowing who my parents were before we were born, how do we know that this is their authentic self? And the truth to that is that they were their authentic self in that particular stage in their life. No shame or misplaced guilt, of course. They are who they were in that moment, and they showed up for each of us in different ways. Did they change before we were born to the day they held each of us in their arms? Well, I would say yes. Absolutely, they changed. I mean, I did when my daughter was born. I was a totally different person in an instant. And the second factor, parents may be in different phases in their lives than they were from child to child. So I guess I answered that question. See, because the truth is, we all change, or at least that is the hope. But thinking that this change caused them to interact with each of us kids differently, doesn't that make sense? I mean, for me, my parents, they had basically, by the time I was born, been married for 2 years and had my brother. And then my next sister, that adds on a couple more years, and then our baby sister. So a lot had changed for them. A lot of life had been lived. So two separate people now becoming married parents, right? So Dr. Mate, he goes on to say that economics can play a role in all these differences of raising children. And I'm sure we could come up with lots of examples. When I was a child growing up, my dad worked and my mom stayed home. I think that was pretty common and typical of that time. This was the 70s. Dr. Mate also said that the temperament of each child can affect how a parent interacts and responds differently to each child. But when I'm looking at my family with my troubled memories, it makes it really hard to make sense of all this. And can I just throw into this? Dr. Mate, he shares that these differences is not about whether the parents loved the child. This is about the child's experience that they had with the parent. Again, it's how the parent showed up in that relationship with that particular child. So for my brother, who was the oldest, my parents showed up differently for him than they did for me. Now, my perception of my sisters, I would say that they're peacekeepers and not necessarily how they respond to our parents today. They too have created boundaries. And for myself, I am truly about what doesn't bring health. I give myself permission to create distance. Really good friends with my dad, not so much with my mom, which makes me sad. See, because I believe love to be an action. I still love my parents, specifically the one that continues to cause hurt and pain. I love because I don't want to have bitterness and anger and constant hurt. So I love, but I also keep space and distance. Now I have to explain a little bit more. As I talk about the upbringing of my brother and my sisters, there are parts that only make sense when you know a little bit more about our home life. So, my parents were divorced. I think I was about 7 years old. That would mean that my baby sister was maybe two. I never claimed to be a mather of math. So, it was at that moment things became very different. The dynamics shifted in both big and small ways. Our dad was no longer in the house and a part of our daily lives, or at least I believe that to be true. I know that he was around and we spent time together. He was there, just not living in the house anymore. And everything changed from that point on. Our mom changed. Or maybe the truth is that she had already changed because of the dynamics between her and my dad. And their decisions, in fact, it changed the way we lived and the way they parented each of us, which now was even more different than it was before for each of us kids. Now, I wish that the trauma of my childhood didn't cause me to forget so much. See, because much of what I do remember of my childhood is kind of like dreams. Where you can sense things, but faces are not clear and voices are muted. That seems to be the foundation of my memory. My earliest memories, I was in fifth grade. One of the things that I remember was a birthday party that I had, my birthday party, and that I was teased because I had a crush on my brother's friend. And I don't know, they were about a year older than I, or a year and a half. I get the sense that our relationship was shifting or had shifted. My mom was kind of hands off with me, not really affectionate, not complimentary or helpful. Sadly, I remember hearing, "You are just too much." Basically, your energy and your needs are too much. I worked at a young age, but I don't remember getting the support to do that. I also sadly remember a lot of abuse. I hate that part. Along with my parents ending their marriage, these big events really shaped me. My brother focused on success and education, and all the adults around him not only encouraged that, but supported him in big ways. I have to say, though, I don't really remember seeing him interact with my parents much. Well, maybe my dad more than my mom. My sister, she was a helper, an organizer, and a take charge kind of person. In some ways, she was the adult. She got a job and she worked hard. I believe she has always been that way. Very responsible, very focused, very driven. and organized with purpose. She's a big heart. She wants everyone to be taken care of and does the things that she believes will provide that. She is very much like this today. Growing up, I believe, based on the way my mom parented her, she felt she had to take care of all the things. Perhaps she would say something different, and maybe someday I'll get to hear that. Now, my youngest sister, she had such a different upbringing. My dad, he was already out of the house when she was just a baby. So by the time she was a teenager, our mom had already been married 2 more times. So for her, there weren't good role models. I don't think there really was for any of us. But she prevailed. She had lots of life experiences, some good and some I'm sure she wished never existed. But come on, don't we all? She's so smart, funny, loving, and very beautiful. She is passionate about so many things. I got to experience going on a hike with her, and she has taken classes about geology, and to listen to her talk about rocks, formations, and how it all came to be, I was so impressed and I learned so much. And the other thing that she's really passionate about is hiking. Just all the things that she knows about how to be safe when you're out there. She would make a really great guide. I love the relationships that I get the privilege of having with my sisters. And sometimes I think it to be a great miracle that aside from the way we were raised in so many different ways, we have bridged those gaps. And I would even go so far as to say we are friends, people who choose each other, not because of the titles that we hold, that we were born into the same family, that somehow our lineage and our genetics tie us together. Take that out of the dynamics, that we truly appreciate each other and we choose each other. Wow, that is all so heavy. Thanks for letting me share that today. So, some of the key things: parents are different with each child, for good or bad. Each parent is growing up alongside each child. Some are good at that evolution and growth, and some aren't. The unfortunate part is that we bring into our parenting role all our unresolved issues. And I believe that there's some sort of physical and chemical reaction that happens within us as a parent, and that it affects the way we parent when kids become a certain age. I believe it can change the way we interact with that child. And when I became a teenager, I think my mom was reminded of the things she experienced. And she didn't know how to handle those feelings. And so here I was trying to find my way, space, and position in life with very little skills, but wanting to be my own person, whatever that was, and whatever that was going to look like. And there was more of this push and pull towards what she wanted and believed was right for me. And I think those things caused a big strain. Now, I believe this is only in part the cause of our on off again relationship. There are other factors. And of course, there's other dynamics that affect the way parents parent multiple children because of things like logistics. Dr. Mate, he talks about these things. With more kids, the cost of living becomes more. So, because you have more kids, there's more food need. And depending on the age of the child or children, you need more supplies and maybe even different ones. The one that comes to mind is more diapers. And I'm sure you've heard this from kids. And it's kind of a common thing that kids say, and even as an adult, that they didn't get to do the things at that age. You've heard it. You didn't let me do that when I was 5 or 12 or 16. And this might be one of the causes for childhood rebellion. The belief that one child was restricted, where another one got more privileges, and the do anything you want to do mindset from one child to another. The firstborn may have lived in a household where there was a lot of restrictions that they had to be a certain kind of kid. And maybe the next kid didn't have to do that, or things were a little less restrictive. Other things that seem to change from child to child is parents seem to have a shift in fairness, which stems from each child needing different boundaries and instructions and different techniques to navigate their world. That you could tell one child, go clean up your room, and they can do it. They don't need any more instruction than that. But maybe another child, you have to be more specific. Go pick up 5 toys and put them in your toy box. Or put all your laundry in the laundry basket. Put it in the laundry room. So those are differences. I hope someday my siblings and we can talk about our experiences in our household. And not necessarily the bad, traumatic things that took place, but how we each remember things like discipline and family time, lessons, mealtime, and other family activities. An opportunity to talk about what differences we experienced from each of our parents and the way that they interacted with us in different ways. Maybe that's something that you can do with your siblings, or maybe you've already done it. As a parent myself of an only child, I know that the person I was when she was born, I was so green. I hadn't really been around a lot of babies, and my marriage was in such disarray, and it definitely affected the way I parented. Eventually becoming a single parent, which again changed the dynamics in our home. I was very protective, and I'm sure it was at times completely over the top. And on the other side of that, I wanted to experience as much as possible with her. She is my light and sunshine. I'm sure if she was able to reflect on this topic of me as her parent, I feel pretty confident that she would highlight a facet of experiences. Parts were good and some parts were not. I really struggled with parenting a teenager. I had no idea what I was doing. Actually, I don't think I ever really knew what I was doing as a parent. I was in a situation where I had to figure it out. You could even say that I grew into it, and some parts became easier. But each part was new, and I was growing up in that environment as well. And I think there is so much influence out there that talks about how to parent. I would like to say if I had a chance, and I'm sure many people feel this way, to do it all over again with my daughter, knowing what I know today, there are things I would do differently. But of course, not having those tools that I have today makes it impossible to conceive of what could have been. That is probably the part where I need to offer myself grace. See, truth be told, I did what I could, the way I could, with what I had. But it also makes me sad that I didn't have more skills or more understanding of what a child needs. My understanding was so limited. Having had the opportunity to host exchange students, teenagers, might I add, I learned so many things. What a great opportunity I had with this different perspective, the things that I had learned up to then, to the point that we had our first exchange student. I had life lessons to use and more knowledge, noting that I was not all of a sudden a different person because, well, I'm basically the same person, same beliefs. But I learned that when my daughter was growing up, the things that I made so important, with fist in hand and a stomp at the foot, that I would even say that those things were absolutely non negotiables at that time, they became something that wasn't that big of a deal. Of course, I still asked for our exchange daughters that they would respect us, that they would have good communication, that they were truth tellers. There was definitely boundaries and rules, which were things that truly hadn't changed. But I definitely handled differently. My approach was not as intense. Well, I would like to think I handled those things with a lot more sensitivity and grace. I'm curious about your family dynamics. Were you a parent raising an only child? Did you have a big family with lots of kids? As a kid, were you an only child? And what was that like for you? Or maybe you have brothers and sisters. What were the differences you experienced from them? How were your parents different with you as opposed to your siblings? Are there things you wish you knew? How would you say these things revealed or showed up so drastically different, making it seem, or according to Dr. Mate, was that it was different, that we did grow up with different parents? And according to all the research I did, the answer is emphatically yes. We lived in the same house, but different parents showed up for each of us kids. This was a big topic today. Thank you for hanging in there with me and talking about this. I love the opportunity to have some real talk time. And now, the legal stuff. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute professional advice. This podcast is not a substitute for medical care. The materials, movies, videos, or books referred to in this podcast are recommendations only. The views expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast host. That's me, or sponsors. Join me each week as we dive into all things Enneagram self-care ideas, self-love patterns, and rhythms, and share ideas from other reputable authors, doctors, current events, and real-life topics, and of course, my favorite podcasters. A big thank you to you for being here with me today on Core Motivations Podcast. We're counting on you to help spread the word about this little corner at Core Motivations Podcast. So hit the follow button, share this episode with someone, and please leave a review. You can find me, Michelle, on Instagram at coremotivations_coach or through email, michelle@coremotivationscoach.com. So let me leave you with this. Until next time, and as always, I'm rooting for you.